In our last video, we were in downtown Chicago where we explored the River North District, the Gold Coast Residential District. We went down the Magnificent Mile and ended at Navy Pier. Today, we're going to explore the Riverfront area of downtown Chicago and give travel tips for first-time visitors.
So right off the bat, I'm going to start by saying this video is somewhat of a conundrum for me. Caroline and I decided a few months back that we just didn't want to film anything that was a paid attraction. The pandemic over the last couple of years has just been absolutely devastating to businesses that rely on foot traffic to exist. Hence the conundrum, because clearly from the video, you can see we are on a paid attraction. But after thinking about it, there's nothing on this video that you couldn't capture very easily by simply walking along the waterfront or standing on one of the mini bridges. So the compromise is I have turned down all the audio so you're not hearing any of that from the tour guide. And we're not going to talk about any of the architecture, because this is one of the architectural tours that you can take, and we highly recommend it. It's fantastic, very informative, very entertaining. So with that said, rather than go down that road, we're going to let you see the wonderful pictures, wonderful video, but instead we're going to talk about, for those of you that may be considering going to Chicago, some tips for those first-time travelers to this awesome American city.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything Jeff just said, and I would just also reiterate, please take the time to do an architectural boat tour if you go to Chicago. Regardless of the time of the year, it will not disappoint. It is well worth doing.
Okay, let's get started. So, for context, that's important. We were in Chicago for about 5 days, and we pretty much stayed in that downtown core area. So the first tip is whether you should drive or not. And I can tell you, if you can avoid it, you absolutely shouldn't drive. We just flew right into O'Hare and took a cab in. Now, at the time we made this video, a cab was roughly $50 each way, maybe a little more with the tip. And if at least our hotel was any indication, the nightly parking was actually about that or even more. So if you stay even more than 2 days, it's actually cheaper to pay that $50 cab rate.
Not to mention, Chicago's a very walkable city with excellent public transportation. The next tip isn't necessarily specific to Chicago, but really as you're traveling, you want to eat local. And one of the philosophies we've adopted is we either share an appetizer or a meal so that we get to go to more restaurants, because that way, instead of just eating maybe 2 meals, you get to try other things. We've also adopted what we call the brunch and the meal we affectionately call dinner, which is between lunch and dinner philosophy. And what I mean by that is a lot of these restaurants that are very popular and local icons are really busy at traditional lunch times or dinner times. But if you go at brunch or if you go mid-afternoon for what we call dinner, a lot of times you can get into these places right away and really enjoy it without the crowds. A good example of this on our trip was Lou Malnati's, or any deep dish pizza place.
Our next tip is don't be afraid to get off of the beaten path. There's absolutely nothing wrong with tourist attractions. They're popular for a reason. But sometimes when you just put away the tour guide maps and go for a walk, you end up in places that are outstanding and very memorable. For us, it was discovering that Gold Coast Residential District where all the row houses were. We really love architecture, and that was such an awesome find. And if that's something you're interested in, check out our previous video because we have a whole section on it.
But speaking of tourist attractions, When you go to Chicago, you should still go to Navy Pier. It is a tourist attraction, and at certain busy times of year, it can be crowded. But there are great views of the Chicago skyline. And when you go out there, don't forget to go on both sides. Walk to the end and come back on the other side. Because as you can see in our previous video of downtown Chicago, the views are stunning in both directions.
Okay, for our final tip regarding safety. I know Chicago's been in the news a lot lately for all the wrong reasons, but the truth is most cities, especially large cities like Chicago, have their good parts and their not so good parts. So the best tip here, and it probably doesn't matter where you go, is just use a little common sense. The middle of the night, early morning hours, probably not the best time to be wandering around through dark alleyways. Again, just use some common sense. During our stay, we did not find Chicago at all to be intimidating or scary, and in fact it was surprisingly clean, and the people in the Midwest are so friendly.
We hope you've enjoyed these pictures and this video, and maybe it's inspired you to visit Chicago and possibly take a boat tour. Cheers!
Get off the couch and we'll see you next time.